These are groups coming into lands that are not there. Right?
They exchanged populations when they drew the lines, and then the Arab nations tried to blow them off the planet.
Yeah, because they invaded.
All the history in the region, right? Like, I don't understand. You can trade. First of all, Jews have always been in the region. This isn't just some fake
Palestinian Jews.
I don't even believe in the Bible. Palestinian Jews are Israelis. Do you not understand that everyone was a Palestinian originally? And the people who have been labeled as Palestinians now are the people that ended up being kicked out in 1948? Like, I don't... Just open a history book, Dr. K, before you speak about this, because you sound so stupid. I'm sorry. It's
I
so
know it.
I mean, you're the one who earlier was saying that Israel isn't a colonial project.
Yeah,
when
like...
Herzl literally called it a colonial project, so...
Wait, it's not a colonial project by any verbal
definition. By every definition is a colonial project.
It is.
We're going to come in, buy all the land from the people here, kick them out. We're going to come into this land. We're going to come into this land. We're going to buy everything up. We're going to take control of this land. We're going to kick everyone out and make our own country.
You know,
Jews
have always been in the region.
No,
Jews have always been there.
Not these ones.
Hey, how about
What do you mean these ones? What is the fuck is that?
Arist, what you're doing is anti-Semitism because you're conflating all Jewish groups as this singular monolith who are like all in the same group. This is stupid. You wouldn't ever like say that. For example, you wouldn't say that one because
you made a claim about the colonial thing. I know you can repeat things over and over again. No, okay. You've been talking over me for like forever.
You're literally talking over me.
Thank you. Great. All right. So there's two different things, right? So there was one, a claim about the colonial aspect of Israel, right? And then two, about like the people who are selling there, right? And so you asked, so let's tackle the second one first, right? Eris, who asked like what you mean by like those types of Jews, right?
Well, yeah, because whenever I've asked someone, please explain how Israel is a colonial state, they literally will just repeat over and over, okay, it's a colonial state, as if somehow you can like self-ID a colonial state. Like, that makes no sense. Okay. Like, give me a proper argument.
I was literally giving substance. What are you talking about?
How many European Jews are in Israel?
Stop. Thank you. Holy crap. We're going to do this one at a time. We can't do this together. Okay. Everyone talking at once. It's not going to work. Got it? Great. Thank you. All right. I guess we'll tackle the first one first, and that's fine. So Eris has asked, okay, how is it a colonial state? All right. Red Charlotte, respond.
From its very foundations, right? The people that were advocating for this state advocated for a system where we would replace the like local population and then kick them out and make it so they could not live there anymore. And then when time came to actually make the state, it was full of pushing people out of their villages, massacring people, having the international bodies basically say you get to have your own country at the expense of everyone there. You know the reason why they didn't accept the two-state solution in 1947? Because they didn't want to accept like a separation of the land into two different nations. Because they were the ones living in that place when like in, I don't know if you've seen the chart, I posted in chart where like nobody has a problem with Jewish people simply immigrating to that plot of land. The problem is when you establish a state that is for Jews, by Jews, and only for Jews, a Jewish state, which even implicitly, even if you say a secular state, by calling it a Jewish state, you are saying that it is basically for Jews and it prioritizes Jews over other people.
Okay, the state that they wanted to establish was an Arab state. Right? This was the time when there was lots of Arab nationalism, right? Yeah. Like Jordan had confirmed.
There were literally Jews living,
everyone.
There were already Jews
this is the late 19th century, the early 20th century. Everyone is nationalism. Oh my God, can I just make an argument?
I'm not done. No, like I'm not done.
Wait, what do you mean you're not done? You ended your point.
I'm not done. No, I'm not done.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
Like you said.
Finish your point, then we'll go to Eris and she can respond to all of this.
Yeah, like you said, Jews were already living there. If you actually if you say, oh, read a history book, you read a fucking history book. You know, like a lot of the like anti-Semitism in the region, while there was anti-Semitism in the region, like in everywhere else in the world, the spike in anti-Semitism in that region of the world is the most anti-Semitic region in the world currently, literally happened in the 40s and beyond. Like beforehand, the level of anti-Semitism that exists after the 40s did not exist in that region.
Anything to do with anything? Like you still haven't
They were tolerant of Jews living there.
All right, Eris, go ahead, respond, please.
I don't even know. Like, I just got bamboozled with a billion points that don't even connect to one another. Like, first of all, it makes no sense. Like, no, it makes no sense. Like, the colonial argument, right? of all, Jews have always been in the region. Jews were kicked out of the region, and some Jews stayed, right? So there was already a huge population of Jews. There was a population of Muslims. There were a population of Druze. There were a population of Christians, right? There were many different races and different ethno groups. The largest groups that had the biggest conflicts between one another were the Arabs and the Jews. And that's why the UN decided... yeah, but they didn't want their own state, right? So literally Britain had made regular deals, right? How do you think Jordan got formed? Jordan was literally an Arab state in its definition. Like, these nationalist states, Zionism was a part of a movement that was across basically almost all races and all ethnic groups to try to establish different national groups, right? No, like this is
everyone
like just
here is against the formation of other settler colonial states, by the way.
Wait. How do you think like Jordan and Egypt and all those things and all those different countries formed? It was all under the movement of nationalism that was starting to be incredibly popular in the 19th century and the early 20th century. So, and anyways, if you're looking at the examination of the populations at the time, right, the Arabs wanted to have their own state, right?
Yeah.
Okay? And they wanted to have their own state under like a pseudo pan-Arabism kind of situation. So Jews wanted their own state too. Right? A few other groups wanted their own state. Druze probably wanted their own state. They didn't get one because they were way too much of a small population. So once Jews started realizing once the Balfour Declaration happened and Jews realized that the Jews in realized that they were about to get their own state, then lots of Jews started migrating as a part of the Zionist movement. Right? But there were always Jews there. It was just more immigrants and they were refugees, right? And I just don't understand. The thing is that like your examination of like it's a colonial state. I actually agree with you. There was an ethnic cleansing in 1948 and it was fucking disgusting.
And ongoing.
Okay. There was a ethnic cleansing in 1948, but
and
like
ongoing.
Stop it.
Okay, can you stop interrupting me, Dr. K?
Please.
Like
it's still going.
Okay. There was an ethnic cleansing, but right when you need to make sure that your arguments are backed up like with actual evidence. Like, it just doesn't make sense that you can just throw these terms like colonial, right, or genocide in and not actually like be able to back them up with any kind of reason. It's very, very frustrating to listen to. And there's just like no historians that agree with your kind of remarks. Even the historians that are even the historians that agree that like Israel was founded on like awful things like ethnic cleansing, right? Like Ilan Pappé, right? Or Benny Morris, right? Benny Morris, like literally, like his entire works if you read The Birth of the Palestinian Refugee Problem, which is the book that literally is the one that proved that there were 700,000 refugees and all the war crimes. He was the one that did all the research against all the war crimes that Israeli soldiers did to Palestinians in 1948, right? Like, he doesn't agree with you. Like, all these different historians, like, just don't agree with you. So I really encourage these people, and if anyone's watching, right, like, you don't have to make up bullshit to still believe in the Palestinian cause. Like, it just hurts the Palestinian movement, and it's very, very frustrating, especially when you're trying to look at the Israel-Palestine conflict. Literally, this region has been controlled from various empires, like from the Roman Empire to the Byzantine Empire to the Ottoman Empire. It's never been independent. It's always been a victim of imperialism, right? Like, the solution in 1948, well, in the 1907 partition plan was trying to find a solution in order to figure out how to solve this crisis of all these different groups who don't get along because of the result of those imperialist powers. So it's like looking at it from like this North American, right, or a European lens makes no sense. It makes no sense whatsoever.
Okay, so
and I will source all the shit I just said.
Okay, one second. I'm gonna let other people in to this. Okay, but I want to thank Destiny for being so kind as to raid us with. It was a lot of people. 11,000, 1,100, not 1,000, 1,146 individuals. Thank you all for being here. Really, okay, sure. Thank you for being here. Really appreciate you guys coming through. My name is Prime. You guys may be familiar with me. Thank you so much for being here. We do political panels. We had a closed panel on the Israeli-Palestine debate. Now we have an open panel where audience members like you, yes, you, can be involved in all of this, right? And we've continued on the discussion. We're having big disagreements here, not a surprise. But yes, we have this content all the time. 6 days a week we give you content, and lots of that content. We love to see you here, right? So thank you. Oh, thank you, Joe Lewis, for also rating me. Thank you, Joe Lewis, for 23 people. Shout out Joe Lewis. But yeah, we have these political panels all the time. We talk about different things. We'll have more content throughout the week. Don't want you to miss out. Hit that follow button right now. Hit that follow button before you hit that follow button, and hit that notification bell so you know I'm going live, because we do this all the time. Don't want you to miss out. Thank you so much. Okay, we are going to go to Nathan. Nathan, go ahead.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, I forgot what I was going to say earlier, but I'll just go jump in with my thoughts now. Looking at just like the history, we can see that the region was owned by the Ottomans for 400 years, where Christians, Jews, and Muslims lived in relative peace compared to now.
It was an apartheid-like system. Relative peace? Okay.
Well, much more peaceful than now. And by
that's a huge claim.
Eris, come on, let the guy finish.
And by 1947, there was 1 million non-Jews and 630,000 Jews. I would not feel justified if I was in the United Nations voting to create a state, a Jewish state, in a region where over half of the population was non-Jewish. I do not feel comfortable in any situation making a state for a religion or for a race. Now, the reason why I was saying earlier, Mini Vosh, I see that in the chat. That's a nice thing to say when D.GG is here. But yeah, I mean, I supported the two-state solution for many years because I thought that the best solution would be that they just pretty much have a wall in between them and never interact. But I don't believe that's possible because, in my view, the more powerful side, the Israeli side, wants to continue expansion. Does that mean that the Palestinians have done nothing wrong at all? No, it doesn't mean they haven't done anything wrong. Hamas is not a group of good guys. But I can say that power dynamics matter. So what I mean by this is, if, like I said earlier, if there was just no conflict or no pushback from the Palestinians at all, you would still have Israelis going into Palestinian land and taking people's homes, people's property, and that's not right. I'm just people say, because I'm on the left, that I'm like some kind of collectivist. So much of my policies and my positions come from me putting myself in other people's shoes. And when I do that, I'm imagining me in my family living in a house for decades, for generations, and being told to leave. Now, the usual argument I hear from people that are more on the Zionist side is that, well, this is Israel's and the Jewish people's homeland since 3,000 years ago, but it's much of the Palestinians' homelands for 80, 50, 40, 30, 10 years ago, and it's being taken from them. Now, do I believe that Jewish people should be able to live there and live peacefully? Absolutely. But do I believe that it has to be done under a Jewish state? No. It needs to be a secular, democratic state. And do I have all the answers to how we get there? No, I don't. But nobody really has the answers to get to anywhere with this conflict. But all I can do is put that idea out there. But yeah, that's my point.
Jews were there 80 years ago. Jews were there 100 years ago. Jews were there like 1,000 years ago. They were there 1,000 years.
I don't have anything against them
I know,
there,
but there's a misconception. Sure. Okay. I agree with you. I don't like the idea of ethno states or Jewish states or anything, right? But Jews have always been there, right? So, and on top of that, this idea that Jews all come from Europe, right? That idea is anti-Semitic.
I never said that.
And the reason, I know you're not saying it. I know you're not saying it. I know you're not saying it.
Why are you proposing something that no one said?
I think she's trying to respond to. I think you're trying to respond to Red Charlotte.
I'm responding. I'm responding to, as a whole, the colonial narrative, right? Especially, this is the problem with the colonial narrative because it paints all Jews, especially all Jews in Israel, as white. The problem is the majority of Jews in the United States are white, so people get this impression, right, that the majority of Jews, right, or all Jews are white, and that's just like not true, right?
It's not
a ton
because
of
they're
Jews,
white, they're doing colonialism though.
Yeah, but they're not from. First of all, okay, but they're not from Europe, and the narrative that often gets painted. And if no one here agrees with this, I'm so happy. That's great, because this is something that I've seen parroted like in the chat, or I've seen parroted on Twitter, or just like in campus all the time. This idea of like go back to Europe, right? Or they're originally all from Europe. And that's just not true. Jews came from all over the Middle East. They've always been in the region. They never really left. So like, don't try to paint Jews as a whole with like this brush that you paint white Europeans, because it's just like not fair.
I mean,
I will say this. Let me add to this.
Sorry. We're moving on. We gotta get a lot of other people in here. Kyo-san, did you want to add anything?
I'm still like really like, I asked a question before and I don't think it's been answered about like how you do a one-state solution in any way that's going to be able to protect the rights of the other people living there without having to worry about the without having the infighting problems that you're having like right now within those states and the people of the what is seen as like the other side, the other rising of other people. Because the intention of the creation of the Jewish state was having a place where Jewish rights were like inherent, internal, right? Whether you agree with it or not, right? So that Jewish people have a place to go back to when shit goes haywire, right? Because they've been a uniquely persecuted people throughout history. Now, right now we see in both areas lynchings and problems, issues going on, right? If you're going to have like a one-state solution, I don't know how you do that while protecting both sides in any kind of realistic way.
Yeah, well, I mean, that was a concern for South Africa. Now, it's not exactly like South Africa, but there's this concept that, you know, the whites and the blacks of South Africa can't live together. But I mean, while they have their problems here and there, they've proven that wrong.
That's not just that they can't live together.
That's the thing about the Israeli-Palestine situation. How you get one group to not oppress the other group. Well, even with two states right now, one group is oppressing the other group and the other group is responding in violent ways. And there's just a hell of a lot of violence. So I don't have all the answers, right? But I can say I do think a one-state secular state would be much better than having two hyper-religious states.
It'd be fully sick if we had like no states and everyone got along and we all held hands and you got each other's nutsacks.
You know what it is? Okay, I'm not trying to propose a fantasy right now. What is a fantasy is saying that the two-state solution is working. That's a fantasy.
So we've literally done this before in history. Kyo, we've already done this. NATO has done this. We literally went into the Balkans and stopped a bunch of people from ethnically cleansing each other, genociding each other, and lynching each other every single day for 10 years, and then forced them to be like a bunch of little countries and like using like the law, governance, military, stopped people from killing each other. We've already done this. This was like 20 years ago.
Do you think NATO could handle this? That's what I want to know. Could NATO handle this?
Yes. Well, absolutely. It's not going to happen. It will never happen. It will never happen. It will never happen. By the way, my NATO proposal where NATO goes in and enforces the 1947 two-state solution, like the borders that were established in that resolution, is never going to happen. It will never happen. It's just like a fuck Destiny's here.
It'll never happen.
So Prime, before I leave, can I throw something out there, right?
Something. Yeah, sure. One last thing.
Yeah. So I really want to push back against this idea that, you know, Israel isn't doing colonialism, because it clearly is. Like,
I never said Israel wasn't doing colonialism.
Yeah, you did.
I said it wasn't founded on colonialism.
It was. So what term would you use then?
Two different things.
It was founded on colonialism.
The Chad, yes.
I'll just give you the definition of what that means. Solve it.
Okay.
Okay, let's.
I'm curious.
Go read the definition of colonialism.
Right, I mean, if you're gonna one at a time. All right. First of all, thanks all for being here. Dr. K, you said you're about to leave. Finish your point. Big and quick, please.
I mean, yeah, like basically every modern state is founded on colonialism. It's the degree and to the ongoingness of the mass murdering that they're doing that, you know, we can sort of understand one as being like a little bit more acceptable than the other, right? Like, sure, Estonia was probably founded on colonialism, but, you know, Estonia isn't mass murdering its, you know, populations within Estonia right now, and so we're kind of okay with that. Whereas Israel is, you know, trying to mass murder a group that's living right next to it. It's doing a forced ghettoization. It's mass dispelling. Like, you know, I mean, it is an ongoing colonial project, as how I would make that distinction. And I think that, trying to throw around apologetics for ongoing colonialism and ongoing genocide of a people like it's kind of disgusting to defend what Israel is doing in any meaningful way.
It's a good thing
I've
no
never
one's done
defended
that.
anything that Israel was doing right now.
All right.
Yeah, it's a really good thing no one's done that.
Okay.
Mass murder, man, they're really bad at it.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that. Okay. All right. So
rocket on civilian housing.
Oh boy.
Goodbye, everyone.
Okay. Great. Thanks.
Right.
All right.
Oh, shoot.
So I want to thank the people who joined us. Omni Slap, thank you for being here. American Nacho, thanks for coming through. Destiny, nice to see you again. It's been a while, but I appreciate you being here. All right, so if you wanted to add anything, Destiny, do you want to add something?
Yeah, just one quick thing. Okay, I don't feel comfortable discussing this because it's a very complicated issue, as a lot of people hopefully are starting to realize. One thing that I think is there are two things to keep in mind while you frame this conversation. One is that, and we haven't gotten too much into this, or at least I haven't heard it. One, the goals of Hamas and the Palestinians that live in the Gaza Strip are substantially different at times than the goals of the people in the West Bank. Okay, the division in the government that exists there, the difference between Fatah and Hamas, they're very, very, very different organizations with very different goals. One. Number two, this is constantly framed as Israel, with the backing of the United States, killing innocent Palestinians, and that's all it is. That is absolutely not fucking true. There is so much interest in this region of the world that is invested in the success of Hamas, whether you're talking about the IRGC and Quds Force from Iran, whether you're talking about Hezbollah that gets massive support from Iran that also helps Hamas up in Lebanon. It is not just like these defenseless Palestinians that are just there getting constantly slaughtered by Israel and by the people in Israel. Okay, there have been massive investments in a lot of different forces around the Middle East that have a vested interest in destroying Israel and the people around there. That's just something that I wish that people would like stop treating this as it's just Israel just doing colonialism. Like they're just like murdering all these poor innocent people in the area. There's a lot of vested interest around here.
The number one superpower in the world versus Iran. I mean, come on, like Jesus. It's completely different. I'm sorry.
I think it's just
Wait, like historically, United States didn't support Israel, right?
Right.
But we're doing it now.
What do you mean by that?
Right. Funnily enough, who was the first nation to support Israel? I'm curious.
Literally the Soviet Union, right?
Wait, everyone here hates the Soviet Union. They were an authoritarian, like despotic, autocratic, like shitty, like.
It's just so weird that whenever I talk to Palestinians, I never see them making Palestinians who are in the diaspora, I never hear them making the arguments that I just hear outsiders make. It's the strangest thing where they try to justify Hamas, right? And I'm sorry that's exactly what I was hearing going on here, right? It was victim blaming and it was kind of fucking gross.
No, I wasn't. I mean, you can open your ears.
No. Okay. I mean, I know you said I know you were asked are you defending Hamas? But usually when you ask a Nazi, hey, do you hate black people? They're usually not going to say I don't like black people. Okay, I hate. They're not going to say that. You got to listen to their arguments, and your arguments really were apologetic.
Yeah, how about this? I'll make a declaration. I am not an Islamist. All right,
okay, cool. Declarations matter. It matters zero.
I mean, if you want to believe that I'm an Islamist, if you want to believe in your heart of hearts that me, a social democrat who admonishes the fucking Soviet Union, hates the Soviet Union, and loves Sweden and Olof Palme, and hates the killing of civilians, and is an anti-theist, if I'm an Islamist. Go ahead and believe that, buddy. The problem when you look at these things is that it kind of sounds so you get these people in the United States that are I don't believe in affirmative action. I don't believe in helping different colors of people. I want it to be colorless. I want a society where none of us pay attention to the color of people's skins. And you have people that say that, and the response to them is always okay, well, that's cool that you want that, but that's not the lived experience of other people, okay? That's not the lived experience of the people in the US. You can't just ignore skin color. If you want to, that's cool, but nobody else is going to. So you have to account for that. And it's the same with Jewish people spread across the Middle East. That's great that you want a secular nation where none of that matters. But the reality is people across the Middle East didn't just kill people because they caught them with a fucking, right? They killed ethnically Jewish people, right? That's why so many hundreds of thousands of Jewish people from across the Middle East have gone back to Israel. So it's kind of weird to step in and be we need to have a one-state solution where it's totally secular, none of that matters. While there's a lot of other vested interests across the region, we're gonna fucking kill Jewish people. I think that's important to keep in mind as well.
It's not politically feasible, because what you're saying when you say you want a democratic, secular, single state is that Jews are basically going to become a minority, and it's not going to be Israel, and
Wait,
that's
that's
just
not
not
true.
going to happen.
And that will
No, no, no.
result, guaranteed, that will result in a genocide of Jewish people. 100%.
What? Okay,
What?
so I have.
Whoa. This is what we're doing here. You're taking my position of me saying the two-state solution or the attempts at a two-state solution have been an ultimate failure. It hasn't worked. There hasn't been peace. It's not going to work. I've been a supporter of the two-state solution for many years.
The two-state solution has never been. Right now we have a one-state solution.
Well,
We're basically an apartheid system.
To have a two-state solution, there have
never
been two states.
implemented
The existence of two
No,
states.
there's no two
hasn't
states.
been
The
done.
Palestinians don't have a
True.
proper state. What are you talking about?
Right. That's right.
We haven't
They
gotten
don't
to
have
two
a proper
states.
state.
So
That's right.
There's never
There's
been
only
a
ever been one
We
situation.
tried to like broker.
Yeah, that's what I'm
this deal
saying. You
with
guys,
them, but
either way, like even
it
if
hasn't
we're
been
discussing, if
successful.
we're arguing, right, or over like the ethics of it, it's completely irrelevant. Israel's there. It's got nukes. Okay, you have two options. There's a one-state solution and that
Why
one-state
hasn't there
solution,
been two states?
right? Okay, there's the one-state solution that everyone advocates for. That's just going to be Israel basically treating Palestinians and Arabs as second-class citizens in an apartheid-like system in order to remain a control and the majority in the country to feel
They
safe.
already do that.
Right? Okay.
We know
They
that.
already do that. They literally already
And
do
the
that.
other, that's literally what I'm saying, which is a one-state solution. The other solution is a two-state solution. There's no other solution there. There's just no other option besides that, unless
How
you
is
want
a
to start a
two-state
nuclear
solution
war.
going to
Why
be done?
isn't there another option?
Yeah, how is there
Fine,
going to be
okay,
a
fine.
two-state
Let's
solution?
just be a doomer about Palestinians. That
No,
sounds
this
great.
isn't a
Okay,
doomer
so-
thing. This is me having the position that there is not a chance we're going to get a two-state solution when one of the states is constantly expanding into the other state, and the other state is responding with violence, or the other region. I'm sorry, but there isn't going to be a two-state solution because neither sides are interested in a two-state solution. They have too
Okay.
much
That's not true.
animosity. Now,
That's not true.
I would
Okay, so that's
say-
just a
Fatah is
statement of the
interested in a
problem.
two-state solution. Most Palestinians want a two-state solution.
Well, that's what Red Charlotte says, but
That's great, but I don't believe after supporting a two-state solution for many years that it's feasible. And I think
We
the
should just
best
give up.
solution.
Wait, why? You keep saying that, but you never demonstrated why.
I'm not saying that we need to give up. But
What
what
do you
I'm
mean we?
saying is that it hasn't, like, separating these regions, putting a wall up isn't even enough to stop settlements, for example.
What do you mean
Having
putting a wall up? I don't think you'll understand what's going on at all in the region. There hasn't been like
there's
a
literally
border
zero
wall up.
settlement.
There's been Israel
Gaza
that has
is
been
being
occupying
controlled.
West
Gaza
Bank
is
and
being
Gaza.
blockaded. There's a 48% unemployment rate. It's an overall
Yes, that is
disaster
correct.
for the
Yes, it's a
Palestinians.
disaster.
I don't
Yes.
believe that dividing them is going to work out. I don't believe that split.
what do you-
having
I
a
don't think you-
country
I don't
be
think-
two parts will ever work out. What we
I
would.
don't think
the
you
best
understand the
thing-
difference between
wait,
self-determination
wait,
and
the
occupation.
best thing.
yeah, right,
the best
exactly.
thing would be for secularism to be in charge there. Not a Jewish
What do you
state,
mean-
not an Arab state, but a democratic, secular state
Cool,
is the most
okay.
ideal.
But,
So like France
most
should
ideal,
administrate
but
this,
who
like they
would
like
decide
secularism.
that?
okay, all right. So,
Who administers
all
this?
right.
There are
Well,
two theocracies here. Who's going to tell them to put the religion aside and create a flag that says we love each other?
You know what
Okay.
this just reminds me of,
Isn't
like
that
the
what I'm
Europeans.
saying?
This just
So
reminds me of like the Europeans who drew up these arbitrary lines,
Yep.
right? When they were drawing up the Middle East in the first place, and they grouped,
Right.
say, like Kurds and Shiites and Sunnis together, and like, hey, you all get along in Iraq. That's gonna be great.
okay. So,
Yeah.
Like, no,
Oh, no,
that's
no,
not.
so-
I'm
so-
sorry.
so-
It's
draw a line.
hold on,
not gonna
hold
happen.
on, hold on. Omni, right? You want to jump in? Give you a chance. All right, then Kobe.
Okay, so first we keep talking about like what do the Palestinians want, but like how about the Israeli government? What do you think they want a two-state solution? I don't think so.
Not the government.
The government
The
doesn't. The
Palestinians
people
do.
do. The people.
Yeah, but that doesn't matter as much, does it? Because the Israeli government is but the most powerful body in that area by far. So I think what they
Originally, they did.
Okay. So what you're talking about and what Nathan is talking about, these are statements of the problem. Yes, these are some of the basic coordinates of the problem. But all of the issues with creating a two-state, these all roll over to creating a single state. So do you think that Israelis want to live in a state governed by Arabs?
They should.
You think that that's something the majority of Israelis want, or the Israeli government wants?
No,
I didn't
if
think
the Arabs,
so.
if the Arabs
So-
want an election, they should be living in a state run by Arabs. And if the
Well, they
Israelis want an
should,
election, then the Arabs should be living under
Okay,
a state run
I
by
understand that you're saying they should, but you recognize that you saying
To
that
even
carries
push
no
for
weight
policy, you
whatsoever.
have to have a goal, an idea first, right? So what we can do?
Socrates, do you think that like hatred, like so you have two groups up? I'll admit we've already gone over this. Palestinians are really anti-Semitic. Like they're really anti-Semitic. Like if you go to the ADL polls, like they believe like JQ shit, like because it's been so like deeply entrenched in like the culture, right? But then you also have like Israelis, how like half of them want to literally expel Arabs from their country. Like, do you think that the solution to like fixing these like cultural issues and these societal issues is to simply segregate them into their own little ethno states until they eventually like blossom into just a war between the two like states? Or do you think that you should force integration, like we've so many times before in history of forced integration?
So I'm going to say the same thing that I said a second ago, which is that you're just describing basic coordinates of the problem. This is a problem. Yes, it's a problem that there's hatred. It's a problem that there's animosity. It's a problem that there's racism. But what are we going to do about it? You're saying we should have one state and that's going to solve it? I'm not clear how that's
a realistic solution.
preferable.
A magic wand that can make a 1 state or a 2 state right now, tomorrow, or the next week. But what we can do is we can stop selling weapons.
We could make a 2 state pretty easily with land swaps.
We can stop selling weapons to one of the sides with the overwhelming amount of power for them to drop smart bombs on civilian targets.
Israel
That's something
already
we can.
So then Russia can just sell it to them instead. Hey, that's a sick idea, right?
You know, that's an amazing thing. I remember hearing in a debate tournament like 3 years ago. Amazing. The idea that we should just have bloodshed on our hands because, well, technically these other guys can have bloodshed on their hands. Well, it's not blood on our hands, so
No, it's not about having blood on your hands. You can do other things other than not selling them weapons. Like, probably the best idea would be, let's just do targeted sanctions, all right? We got fucking Bibi there. We got fucking Israel. They're already in the pocket of the US. They already buy a significant amount of money from them, right? You can just do other things, right? Just saying, let's not sell the weapons. Let's get the blood of the US's hands.
Not selling weapons is one of the things we can do. Not selling weapons is one of the things we could do. Why should we be fueling the war against? Why should we be fueling a war against like a weak people? Into Palestinians, the people that have already been getting shit. Why should we?
American foreign policy is not dictated by any kind of morality. No, I don't understand.
If you're talking about like targeting policy, right? Because when we look at policy, we have targets for that policy, right? We don't just have like, let's stop selling weapons to them so we can feel morally better about it ourselves, right? No, that's fucking stupid, right? Instead, you can do other things.
Feeling better. It's about. It's like giving a knife to a murderer. Why would we do that?
Okay.
So like,
because it's looking at
the targets of the policy, right?
Wait, so this is like what we talk about all the time. So Nathan, this is where I'm going to disagree, right? So like, as much as I want to fucking drone strike Erdogan, right? Like he's a piece of shit and get rid of the Saudis. The reason why we're allied with the Saudis and we have to like, we should be allied with them and try to just change them over time is because if we don't, then they'll literally just go to Russia. Like the reason why we keep Turkey in NATO is because like if we didn't, like they would just one of the biggest military powers in the world would just side with Russia. Like, and we don't want that.
Okay.
Well, and
yes, Turkey is
have nuclear warheads.
And we should just like pressure them to stop.
Okay, great. Kobe.
Oh, hello everybody. I have a lot to say, so hope everyone's doing well. Okay, so I'm going to start off here very, very quickly with a quote, one of my favorite quotes ever from Thomas Huxley, who was a big like kind of science communicator guy. He was like a what's his name? Neil deGrasse Tyson of his day. He once said that my business is to teach my aspirations to conform themselves to fact, not to try and make facts harmonize with my aspirations. Right? We have to work within reality. We can't first have our work backwards, right? So first things first, I would like to talk about how I came very quickly to appeal to the other side, how I went from being an anti-Zionist, somebody who viewed very much similar to Nathan's position, that we kind of just needed to force upon a single democratic state that hopefully we kind of would force away some of these prejudices, how I came from that to more of like a, sort of a two-state solution position. It is very complicated, the way that you get groups of people that have religious, cultural, etc., just political differences to live together. It is not as simple as put them in a room and let them fight it out. When that happens, we have Yugoslavia, we have Ireland, we have was happening and happened to Native Americans. Doesn't work out very well. The example that many people bring up, which I think is not the fault of most people, it's the fault of the narrative in America, is South Africa. South Africa is actually an incredibly complicated state. It's probably the single most complicated state on Earth. The idea that South Africa is a single state number one, it's just not true. South Africa broke apart into South Africa, Lesotho, and Swaziland. So number one, there are 3 independent states there. And number 2, even within South Africa, there's a lot of differences between, like, there's still townships, which are unincorporated towns that a lot of the black population live in, that are not even on a map. There are still the remnants of Bantustans, which are they're official towns now, but they're much poorer. Cape Town looks like London, and you go to a Bantustan and it looks like what you think of Africa in like the movie. So to try to like appeal to Africa, or sorry, South Africa as like an example, I think actually makes a little bit, like the reading about South Africa pushed me more towards a 2-state solution. It looks like for South Africa to be a one nation, it's going to take years of, like, there's differences between these different groups that it's going to have these complicated administrative positions, right? People already kind of touched on it with like this what people were referring to as the Sykes-Picot Agreement. That's the big agreement that was after World War I, where the Western powers cut up the Middle East, and they kind of had this exact same perspective of Sunnis and Arabs and Druze and Yazidi, figure it out. You can all have Iraq, you'll have a democratic state, you'll figure it out. And that didn't work. Didn't work out well for Iraq, and obviously Iraq still has a lot of instability, and partially because of that. The last thing I'd like to say finally, is just that I actually think that just completely cutting off weapons is not a good idea. As we're saying with Russia, we have like, I feel like I don't want to reiterate points too much, but we have power to push them in one way or direction more when we're the ones that are helping them with Iron Dome and stuff. If it's Russia, I'll be honest, Russia I don't think cares about human rights as much as the America does, which is not a very high standard, but it is lower, and that should be the goal. So I would hope that we could move away from this mindset that we just need to impose, like, I don't want to say, I guess, like a Western, I don't want to say Western framework, because like, it's not just Westerners that want a 2-state, there's a lot of different people that want a 2-state, but like, you know what I mean, that want to impose, like, we shouldn't impose ideology first, we have to impose pragmatism first, because we can all agree that what matters most are like the living people in Israel and the living people in Palestine that are there right now, and their situation needs to be number one, right? So that's my take.
Okay.
Yeah, and what's really important is there needs to be like viable solutions, right? Because every single day we know that Israel has the power, and every single day, like, Palestinians still have to live under occupation. They still have to live under the incredible oppression by Israel. So it's like they don't have like time for us to get to our dream of our Star Trek, like, you know, utopia where everyone lives together, and there's like that kind of stuff. I want that to happen eventually, and I'm sure it will happen over time. Hopefully it will, right? But for now, the ideal situation is to get to something that's the most viable, and the most viable is having 2 states. And the way you do that is you discourage Israel from building settlements, right? Which is the number one thing, because every single time a settlement is built, you get further and further away from that 2-state solution. So that should be like the focus. That should be everyone's focus on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, if you care about Palestinians, right? If you're doing anything else and you're just talking about just let's wipe Israel off the map, let's like do all this, like, Israel's got nukes, like, regardless of morals, like, we're debating about that, it's like it's not going to happen. So it feels like you don't really care about Palestinians if you're just like if you're just trying to go for this moral purity thing when it's not even going to actually help them. Okay. And they're still going to die as you're morally pure on Twitter.
We'll go to Socrates and Red. We'll go to Socrates and Red Charlie.
Sure. Yeah. So, okay. Like just to build off of that. So, and to answer Nathan Galang directly, we're talking about selling weapons. So not in terms of selling weapons, but the $4 billion that USA gives in military aid to Israel, putting conditions on that. I think a great thing to put the conditions, this is something that the American public should try to pressure Biden. He's probably not going to do it based on his stance on Israel for like a really long time. He's probably not going to do anything. But if we're going to try to pressure him to do anything, it would be to put conditions on that military aid that Israel stops building new settlements. That's something that if it were to happen, it would increase trust. And there's something really cool. So the very little bit that I understand about the Israeli political system in the Knesset is there's this relatively small but significant voting bloc of the people who really like settlements, want to do settlements, have been aligned with Netanyahu for a long time. If he were to stop building settlements, they wouldn't like him as much. So it puts him between a rock and a hard place politically. So he has to choose between both the kind of like hawkish, security-minded people who want that military aid, of course, not that Israel is totally relying on America, but $4 billion is nothing. and the people who want the settlements, it actually starts to split those things apart. You start putting more of a wedge between the settlers and the general populace who want security. That would be a really, I think, good development. This is something that I've developed in my head, haven't tested. Please call me out if this makes no sense. But this seems like a very straightforward, concrete kind of thing to put requirements on, other than like, end the occupation, creates 2 states. Those are really long-term, like kind of nebulous things, but no new settlements seems at least potentially measurable.
Okay. Go ahead, Red Charlotte.
So Kobe brought up this thing earlier, and I think I just wanted to say that I think we literally talked about this earlier. Even the people here, I don't know about Nathan on this, but I think Nathan agreed with me. It's in the VOD. Like, I literally said that, like, even though I'm for the 1-state solution, the 2-state solution comes first, and like the goal of the 2-state solution should be the 1-state solution in the future. Like,
I agree with that.
That's reasonable.
because it's like, yeah, Israel's not going anywhere, right? That's the, like, even if you want it to be gone, like like what Vosh said or whatever. Like, it's not going anywhere. And if we tried to get rid of Israel, it would defend itself with its nukes, because that's when countries use their nukes to defend their sovereignty. So there's no point in talking about like establishing 1 state like right now or whatever. But I still think that I think NATO is like forcing the 1947 lines is a pretty good start, which even that I don't think would happen.
American Nacho, you want to say something?
Yeah, some of the other people kind of touched on what I was going to bring up, but I was just trying to figure out basically like where we're going to go from here, essentially, because it seems like if we were to back off, like just like Red Charlotte was basically touching on, is that they have nukes. They could potentially just erase Palestine with their nukes, and because of our backing to some degree.
I don't know if they want to do that, but area.
Well, I'm just saying, like, if they run out of ammunitions, the small ammunitions that we're providing, essentially, and we're selling to them, we just signed another, like, $750 million deal to, like, sell them more ammunitions or whatever it was. They resort to that, you know what I mean? Like, if they're still getting attacked by Palestine, like, they're going to use whatever they have, right?
They would need to resort to some degree.
What?
They would need to resort to nukes. They could use their.
I'm sorry. What?
Sure, I'm just trying to say, like, they have nukes, like other people have pointed out in here. Like, what can we really do here? And then I also had a question for Red Charlotte, because I kind of showed up a little bit late. I didn't know this was a topic. I just kind of hopped in. I wanted to. I haven't been by in a while, but I didn't know what you meant by, like, what is your definition, Red Charlotte, of like the 1-state solution, I guess, that you're referring to?
Like, well, one country. Like, there is no like division in the area. It's just one country. Like,
with
a parliament and like a secular government with a constitution, etc.
Unify America and Mars.
Okay. Like this is like so like the thing with like with the NATO thing, the reason why even though they wouldn't do it, why it would be much easier than like any other operation is because I think people sometimes when we talk about Israel, a lot of people really forget how fucking small Israel of a country. Like, for example, here's from perspective. Gaza, right? Like, the length from the bottom to the top of Gaza is 27 miles. It's like a 20-minute drive, right? And like the total size of Israel is like the size of my fucking left ass cheek, right? I live in Michigan. It's the size of like barely the thumb, right? It's very tiny. NATO would be able to instantly remove Hamas. They would be able to cease Israeli strikes. They would be able to set up a hard border with like passports and all these different things. Like, they've done this before, but like it's not gonna happen because obviously like they have no interest in like protecting Palestine or whatever.
I mean, I think the fear would probably be that extremists on either side, or like extremists especially on the Israeli side, would fucking, I don't know, launch a damn nuke or some crazy shit.
I don't. No, they wouldn't. They wouldn't do that. They wouldn't do that because as long as we promise to not like invade their sovereignty,
it
to
just
say
seems...
like we're not ending the Israeli government, they're not going to do that. This is like the game theory shit. They're not going to send nukes if their government isn't going to be destroyed. Like, they have no reason to.
Yeah, I think the only scenario they would use nukes is if like they got invaded by Iran or some shit.
Sure, but wouldn't NATO like stepping in like that like be a
no? Because NATO isn't there to destroy Israel.
And then also
it's also just a fantasy land that would never happen.
Yeah, I'm not trying.
So I don't know why it's being brought up.
Yeah.
Well,
To answer the question, not to ask that, like what can be advocated for? I think there's like a variety of things. I don't think that I think hopefully everybody can agree. Home demolitions make this more difficult. The more changing there is of property in general is just going to make any kind of solution more difficult because it just adds more paperwork to it. That needs to be stopped. I think that there could be a pretty good argument being made that I think the IDF could continue some kind of military operations in Gaza. If there's like a hyper super terrorist standing in the middle of the desert, obviously you can blow them up, but like we need to stop blowing like the instances in which like the AP building and stuff like this. I think there needs to be heavier pushback on
engagement.
There needs to be like a consequences for stuff like this, right? We would never let any other like nation do it, and so I think that we shouldn't do that. I think that there should be obviously one thing that already has happened, which is already I think going to make the solution better. During the March of Return, the Palestinians were dealing with a historic drought of international aid from America because of the wonderful Trump administration, and that has been reversed. Biden has reintroduced the aid to the Palestinians, so the more moderate factions of the I know there's a million. I know that we were talking about people use outdated terms. Is it Fatah? Is it Palestinian Authority? Where we're talking about in the West Bank?
Look, I gotta go like right now, but just quickly before I leave, I will say that we've attempted to stop them from doing settlements under the Obama administration, and they rejected. Yes, we did. Israel rejects U.S. demand to freeze settlements. This was in 2009. Wait, I gotta go.
I don't agree that Obama tried to end the settlements.
Obama tried in the way that he tried to Obama tried to do that in the way that he tried to get the public option passed.
Medicare for all.
Put it in the thing, exactly. And he said he's going to do it, but then the second he got any pushback, he was like, it's okay. We don't need it.
Exactly.
You guys are okay. That's cool.
Yeah, exactly. Obama didn't really push back, but it still pissed Israel off that Netanyahu essentially hated Obama by the end of the Obama term.
Netanyahu hates everyone.
Then he came into our Congress and was like, "Hey, your president sucks." It's fucking weird.
Yeah.
I mean, Netanyahu hates everyone who doesn't deny the Holocaust.
I gotta go now, but yeah, I don't think that there's going to be a way that we stop the settlements, even if we say, hey, we're going to sell you these weapons under the condition that you stop the settlements. I don't think they're going to accept, which is unfortunate, which also means the weapons points kind of...
well, then we stop selling the weapons.
Now, I would say, I see where Red Charles is coming from, where we still have these alliances and we still sell these weapons to maintain our status and to make sure that the Russians or like the Chinese don't step in and become the dominant force in the region. Now, the problem is, I don't view that as enough justification for us to keep abating and supporting these genocides and mistreatments of these weaker groups across the world in that specific region. Now, I know there will be some disagreement, but I am very much against supporting the U.S. giving weapons to Israel to bomb Palestinians. I'm against giving weapons to Saudi Arabia to bomb the Yemenis. I'm against giving weapons to Turkey for them to support the oppression of Armenians, right? Now, like, that's my point. Do I think that... Now, I'm not one of those people that care so much about philosophy. It's like number one thing, but I do think it is morally abhorrent that taxpayer money goes into the killings of these people. No one signs an agreement when they pay their taxes like, yeah, I want to go kill Palestinians. It's cringe, it's bad, and we should not have that blood on our hands. If the Russians want blood on their hands, then so be it. But we shouldn't. But yeah, that's my final point. All right, I'll see you guys later.
Yeah, and I want to... So you brought up Fatah, Kobe, and this is actually really interesting. Why Hamas even exists, like, and rules over Gaza in the first place. It's literally because of Israel and the Israeli government. Like, I have some interesting articles about like how like the reason the PLO did do bad stuff, right? No one here is defending like the Intifada, right? But like the PLO at least, when they're struggling for like a two-state, the PLO is like secular, like socialist, and like all these different things. Right? They're not Islamist groups, but then like with the interference of like the Israeli government in like Palestinian affairs, politics, and whatever, like that's how Hamas came to like come into power or whatever. Without the interference of the Israeli government, you wouldn't have this Islamist group shooting random missiles every once in a while into like city squares or whatever.
I disagree with that. I mean, I think that there's everything you said, there's a truth to it. I think Mossad did fund or the early like Muslim Brotherhood in Palestine as a counterweight to the People's Popular Liberation Front for the People's the socialist and secular elements of the Palestinian side. But I definitely think that the overall rise of the Muslim Brotherhood in general across the Middle East was probably the larger catalyst in that taking up. But I do think that it's good to point out that there's a bit of blowback there.
Yeah, like I think even the last time they had like the Palestine had like a government where it's like seats with individual people and parties or whatever, and it was like very organized. Like while Hamas had control and they still have control, their amount of control wasn't like they controlled 70% of the government, right? And everyone was like super pro Hamas. It was like they had like 55% of the House or whatever. Like so like it's still possible for the West to, you know, it'd be kind of weird. They will never do it, but like it'd be interesting if the West just like propagandized Palestine into like being pro Fatah and like PLO or whatever, being like stop supporting Hamas or whatever.
Well, a lot of Palestinians think that the election in the West Bank is not even like they think it's like rigged by the Israeli government for Mahmoud Abbas. So like even if Mahmoud Abbas like and I have no clue if it is rigged. Like I wouldn't. Yeah, I don't.
Wasn't
know
the last election
that.
like 2006 or something like really long time ago, right?
Mahmoud Abbas is very, very unpopular, and it's really sad because in a way he's like being the best thing to happen to Palestinians in terms of like making peace allocations and all of that stuff. If Mahmoud Abbas had been around in 2000 when the Camp David Accords happened, the Palestinians would have their own state right now. Just unfortunate timing.
But what is the? I'm like trying to look at this from the Palestinian perspective. Like, these peace. And I don't know what exactly has been done. But these overtures to peace, right? They don't ever seem to be accomplishing anything. Or is there something I'm missing here?
Well, they accomplished something.
Oh, okay, sure.
Right,
well, in 2000, if you want to look at the Camp David Accords, you can actually Bill Clinton. He has a whole chapter in his book also dedicated because he was the one like organizing it. He wrote his
Camp David though.
He has his writings on Camp David.
Sorry, I should clarify when I say that they accomplished something. What they did is they accomplished a successful distraction from the massive annexation of the West Bank.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess I would ask, like, if to look at that, like, what have the peace process accomplished? I guess I'd ask, like, what has the offensive accomplished, right?
What has the offensive?
But if you look at the peace offer in Camp David, they literally offered Ehud Barak offered the West Bank, they offered Gaza, they offered I actually am not sure about Jerusalem. And they even offered a symbolic amount of the people for the right to return, and then huge amounts of financial reparations for all victims and their descendants from the 1948 war and all the 700,000 Palestinian refugees. Basically, all the requirements that the Palestinians want right now, they originally offered, and Yasser Arafat rejected because he'd already been planning the Second Intifada. So he actually went into that peace talk already planning on rejecting it, regardless of what was offered. And yeah, it's like one of those, it's one of the stories of how Israelis became very radicalized to the right.
I'm asking what, and that's my fault for not clarifying it. No, that's okay. My fault for not clarifying. Oh, what has it done recently? Right. So you're saying that this person, got it. You said the name and I'm sorry, but the head of PLO, has been
head of Fatah, Mahmoud Abbas.
Mahmoud Abbas, excuse me, thank you. Has been making these peace overtures. What has that done recently? Like, why should he be popular? I know there's more things than just Israel Palestine.
No, he's largely seen as ineffective, right?
Okay. So
but he's ineffective not because of him. He's ineffective because of the Israeli government. Because while he's been in power, who's been in power on the Israeli side, right? Because it takes two to tango. And it's been Likud and Netanyahu. So it's like really unfortunate for him. If he had been in power when Ehud Barak had been in control, or maybe even Ariel Sharon, there might have been a different story, right? But because like he had like the luck of being in power with basically like an awful government that wants a one-state solution, apartheid-like state, then there's very little that he can do if he wants to support like peace processes. Like, so he'll go and he supported he went and tried to make a bunch of allocations in like the UN. He's been supporting a lot of like, I guess, protest movements around the world and all that stuff, but it's largely been ineffective, but it's not because of like his effort.
You're muted, Brian.
Just to clarify my statement, when I said offensive, what I was saying is like it doesn't. I mean, like I think the first, at least according to what I've read of Benny Morris, it seems like the first Intifada.
Hi, sorry. Can you guys hear me now? Yeah, my mic just cut out. I didn't mute myself. My mic literally just cut out. Whatever. But thank you, Kobe, for trying to cover me. Actually, Kobe, just finish your point. Go ahead.
Yeah, all I was gonna say is that what I was saying is that while I do recognize there's a lot of downsides and there has been a lot of stagnation with the peace process, it seems as if at least other than the first Intifada, which for people who listen don't know, then these are just like the first like sort of armed uprising of mostly civil disobedience in the early 1980s. That was at least according to Benny Morris, pretty successful. They got there's he at least believes that kind of led into some of those 90s peace talks or the pressure that put on. But that was not like Hamas stuff. That was not like blowing up buses like we saw in 2006 in the second Intifada. That was like a lot of it was like strikes. A lot of it that it was like the last big push of the secular part of the Israeli. Or sorry, of the Palestinian resistance. But it seems like the other kinds of armed resistance, Hamas's versions of armed resistance, I mean, it just seems like that's, if anything, emboldened the IDF and gotten a lot of people in the West against the Palestinian cause,
Well, the reason why Netanyahu is so popular right now is because of two major factors. The second Intifada in 2001, and then later the pullout from Gaza and Hamas taking over Gaza and using the area to launch rockets, right? The pullout of Gaza was like a huge peace offer, like from the Israelis' perspective, right? Though it was done in a very flawed way. And so that was kind of like a nail in the coffin to a lot of Israelis, especially leftist Israelis, who had before had a lot of at least like sway within like the culture of Israel, and now like that was like their final argument because it pulled out of Gaza. Because now the argument is you pull out of the West Bank, then like Hamas is just going to take over there and then start launching rockets into Jerusalem. So like that's one of the those are the two main factors that led to Israelis becoming so right wing now and against peace.
So Kobe, you're saying what has these offensive gotten? But it seems to have gotten like international attention. It seems like otherwise, mainly we just don't pay attention to that part of the world, right? You'll hear like during the U.S. campaign, right? Like a presidential campaign, we'll ask candidates about that, right? Oh, what do you think about Israel? And okay, that means something to someone, right? But other than that, the world seems to ignore the problem. And then this is the regular conversation when it comes to like violence within these movements, right? To fight for your rights, right? Should you do it through violence or simply civil disobedience or other methods, right? And once again, right, when people are dying, when explosions are happening, there's fires, right? Then the media comes running, and the world takes a look. So maybe that's what's accomplished. I'm not trying to defend anything. I'm just trying to literally.
I would just argue that it kind of draws attention to the wrong people at the wrong times, right? So as Eris points out, draws attention to the hard right in Israel, which obviously matters a lot. It draws attention to the evangelicals and so on in America and people that support Israel in the West. And then I do agree that obviously there's a lot of like moral support within like the Arab world, the Muslim world for the Palestinian cause, and a lot of places in the third world, Ireland and stuff. But unfortunately, moral support doesn't do a lot, right? If you don't have like if your country doesn't have influence in the region, you can morally support it all you want. That doesn't do a lot. So
that's the CUIF. Those people are wacky. What a wacky bunch. They're even bigger than AIPAC. I didn't know that until like a month ago. It's crazy. Evangelicals are they're like we need to create Israel so the rapture can happen or whatever.
Yeah. There's some crazy batshit.
Omni.
Exactly.
Oh yeah. So I'm gonna get a little bit doomer in a second here about this, but like, okay, so I don't really. This is a good discussion, an interesting discussion to have, but honestly, I don't think it's gonna get fixed. Definitely not internally. So I think the only way that a problem like this is ever gonna get fixed is like from the outside. Like outside pressure, you need pressure from on the Israeli government, okay, because they're the most powerful government there by far. You need pressure by the U.S. government, who supports the hell out of them. You need pressure by like the UN, NATO, and things like that. I think that's the only way that this is ever going to be solved, because it's just too much of a swamp on the inside. It's politically, like neither party gives a shit enough to like to really fix it. So I think that's the only way it's ever really there's gonna be any change.
Well, I think stating that in a kind of supporting that and stating that in a slightly different way, the only reasons that Israel has ever given back land is because of political pressure or some kind of gain. Israel isn't going to, so they've basically had a cost-free occupation, and there hasn't been a political cost. There hasn't been any kind of like major sanctions cost. There hasn't been a cost in terms of public opinion that's translated into any kind of action. And so without something substantial on the line, and I don't know that like the U.S. military aid alone would even do it. I mean, Israel is pretty self-sufficient in a lot of ways, and they're pretty economically powerful and militarily powerful overall. Maybe they depend on the U.S. a lot earlier. They don't hate $4 billion, but they're not so dependent on it. But it is going to take some kind of real political pressure to make something happen.
But I can just be a little.
Wait, Israel's defense stuff. So Israel's defense budget is about $20 billion. We give about $4 billion a year, like which aids their like defense spending. That's like a whole quarter of their defense spending. This would be a huge knock to their ability to like engage in warfare, especially with all the other countries who are U.S. aligned, who also give money to Israel, right? It's like the same thing with Afghanistan. Like the U.S. paid for like 90% of their defense spending, so if it's up to us if we want them to die or not. Like the U.S. has leverage. It can just be like, hey, buddy, stop that, or we will stop giving you money. And that's a lot more serious than just being like a verbal condemnation or whatever.
Oh yeah,
I agree with that, but like, if I can be like a bit of a hippie lefty here, but I feel like there's viable reason for this to be effective. Is I think at the end of the day, considering how powerful Israel is now, if we were talking like, I don't know, like 40 years ago, I'd be like, oh, like maybe that is the best option. But I think the best option right now is to change the hearts and the minds of Israelis. And the way to do that, and the way I've seen that happen, is through like, I really think that Israelis need to hear Palestinian stories, because right now their entire exposure to Palestinians is through like fear, right? And they see like the worst and the worst, and they're exposed to, I can tell you, and I can tell you firsthand as a Jewish person and Israeli being raised with it, you are raised with so much propaganda. Like so much propaganda. You were just shown like all these like Palestinian television shows and children's shows about them, teaching them how they hate us and all this stuff. And so your exposure is very much of like the Palestinians being these very like terrifying people, when in the reality is so much the opposite, right? And in the reality, they're victims. So I think, number one, obviously I'm biased, and I think like teaching the history of what happened to Palestinians in 1948 is very, very important, especially teaching that in Israeli schools, and teaching that to Israelis and Jewish communities that support Israel. And just like also encouraging, like there's a huge Palestinian film movement, though it's being kind of temporarily on hold with COVID, and just telling Palestinian stories. Like there's this organization I think it's Nakba.org, where you can go and like you can listen to actual Palestinian stories, and hear their experiences in 1948 and hear their other experiences through their oppression. And I think like the emotional side, even though I know it's like, you know, it's not facts and logic and reason, like human beings are very emotional creatures. And if there's something that Jews can understand, Israelis can understand, it's like being oppressed, and it's being kicked out of your homes, and it's having war crimes committed against you. And I really think that if like more Israelis and more Jews like watch this kind of stuff, like you would start to see like a bit of a change, because that was one of the big things that changed my opinion and have changed a lot of other Jewish opinions that I've seen. Yeah, that's my hippie lefty shit.
What did you?
But with the Israeli government,
can you ever answer me, Eris? What are you eating? Can you tell me?
Oh my god, I'm sorry. I'm eating nuggets.
No, it's fine. That's fine. I just very curious. Sometimes you eat when
I'm gonna go to sleep, but I ordered the nuggets so I could stay up to be in this conversation.
Oh, thank you. Oh, thank you for that. But like, I hear you eating every so often. Like not like.
I'm sorry.
No, not just no.
Literally,
no, it's fine. It's fine. But I'm saying like every so often I hear you eating stuff when you stop by my channel, and I'm always very, very curious as to what it could be. So nuggets. All right.
Slurp it down with some chocolate milk.
Okay, exactly.
Yeah, the nuggets are like a joke on my channel, so I don't know if my viewers are watching.
Oh, I understand.
They're so good though.
Okay. So I think we covered it.
I think we solved the Israeli-Palestinian conflict.
Solved it. Yeah.
Done. All right.
We just ended anti-Semitism and Islamophobia all in one conversation.
Well,
And this is how
nuggets
peace
is
would
everything.
peace in the Middle East.
But okay, I was thinking of a completely different topic to go on afterwards. If anyone is still
so much
around.
fun.
New slogan, all right? From river to sea, everyone will be free. Everyone. All right.
Yay! This didn't go anywhere near as volatile like as I thought it would be volcanic, and it wasn't that bad. I survived it pretty good.
But yeah, thanks for that. That was still not as bad as that could have been. Let me tell you, all of that. But
yay, Prime!
Revolt in chat says not do Iraq. Okay.
Oh, okay.
What is? Whatever it is.
But to those who are here, thanks for all stopping by. If you're new to this channel, if you just stopped in, we have these political conversations all the time. 6 days a week, we give you content. I don't want you to miss it, all right? So hit that follow button if you haven't done so before. Hit that follow button right now and hit that notification bell so you know I'm going live. We do this all the time. A lot of content coming your way, so don't miss out. Hit that follow button right this moment, okay? And to those who have been here and want to support, then subscribe. $5 is all it takes to keep this channel alive, right? Need your support. Need your support there at home. If you've been enjoying what we're giving you, and we give you a lot of it, well then, $5. Please subscribe to the channel. Or you can donate bits, or you could donate subs. All fantastic options. We also have a PayPal button below. If you scroll down on your desktop, you can see the PayPal button, or ! donate in chat in case you're on mobile. Is another way to help us out. And we have Patreon! Okay, I can't talk. Exclamation point Patreon. There we go, right there. Helps us out. And there's another one. Here's another one. Something. Oh yes, my socials. My socials right there. Follow us on Twitter, right? And subscribe to us on YouTube. That's what we're trying to grow to keep this channel sustainable. So hit our YouTube button there, subscribe there, and come and join the Discord. That's the heart and soul of this community. That's where we have these open conversations. It all happens on Discord, and we have very, very long talks, and people flame each other stuff in text channels. It's much fun. So come and join that too. So exclamation point social, join us there. All right.